والسلام على محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم واجعلنا منهم آمين. Inshallah, today we will shed some light on the latest events in Palestine, Lebanon, and if we have some time, we'll touch base on the evolving events in the American elections. And as I mentioned in my email or text, this will be our last session, inshallah, for the next 6 weeks, since I will be, inshallah, out of the country. So, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meanwhile, bring the khair and the best to the Ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and alleviate the suffering from the Ummah and give hidayah to those who do not know about this deen. Allahumma ameen. Not much have changed since we talked the last time about Gaza. Last week, Brother Hassan Baloch have discussed a book about the basically the Israeli lobby in the US. So for about, I would say, 2-3 weeks, there was not much change. At the beginning of that time, we have all sort of individuals from the US, from the Zionist side, from the Qatari side. All of them are saying the same thing. We are very, very close to an agreement. This has been going for more than 3 weeks. The only one who is not saying we are close to an agreement is Netanyahu. And of course, the extreme right wing are on the same page. But the rest, from the Mossad to the Shin Bet to the defense minister, to other Israeli officials, the US officials, Qatari, we are very close. We are very, very close. So what is it that is hindering this agreement? If you remember, this agreement is supposed to be based on the Biden initiative, which was only a copy of what Netanyahu have suggested to the US. Biden adopted it and went to the Security Council and get a vote for it, 14 for it. Only Russia abstained. And from that point, the thinking is, there's no objection because this is basically Netanyahu proposal. I mean, if he's making this proposal, then by default, he's in agreement with it. Well, not that easy. It turned out that he will wait until the different parties, when I said the different parties, mean the US CIA director, sometimes with the help of the Secretary of State, Qatar and Egypt, and representative of Shin Bet or Mossad or one of the cronies of Netanyahu, because he no longer trusts the Israeli leadership in the army or in the intelligence, so he sent his own representative. Whenever they get to a point where it's very close, let's just stab on it, he comes and put a new condition. And this has been the only reason why there is no agreement. Now, basically, the agreement is there will be 6 weeks of ceasefire. Hamas will release X number of hostages, dead and alive, and all the women and the elderly. They will keep the male soldiers. And the Israelis will release prisoners based on an agreement between the two parties. And then they will start talking about a permanent peace. Because remember, Hamas was insisting until 2 months ago or 3 months ago or so that in the first stage we have to discuss the end of the hostilities. And Hamas made this big compromise in this regard, which was really stunning to Netanyahu, because Netanyahu thought that Hamas would reject the proposal. But Hamas did accept the proposal, and that's what now he is trying to play around. And again, this is consistent with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about the children of Israel. They just copied the same methodology. Whenever they make an agreement, they will take the first opportunity to break it. Whenever they make an agreement, they will take any opportunity to break it. And we have seen this repeated again and again and again. At one point he comes and says, the US need to give me guarantees. At another point he said, we have to have presence in the Philadelphia corridor so that Egypt, the Hamas cannot get from Egypt weapons. And then he comes and says, we need to control the center so that armed men cannot go back to the north. In fact, this is the main point that now he is after, is that he wants to be in place to prevent any armed Hamas, Islamic Jihad, etc., to go back to the north. So all this play is ongoing. When his time to come to Washington, D.C., there were some big expectation from the families of the hostages, from many politicians, that before he goes, he will make such a statement to the effect that the agreement will be in place and that he already is dispatching people to make an agreement. And instead, to the surprise of all of those people, plus the US, he came before he left to Washington, D.C., to give the speech in front of Congress. And he said that I gave instruction to the negotiation team to go on Thursday. So basically saying that it's after I give the speech in Congress, after I meet with Biden, after I meet with Harris, then I will send the team. So basically there will be no pressure on him because the team is not there. If the team is already there, he is on the spot. He needs to make a statement. And he will not go with Biden and say, you know, I do not want this to fly. I want to make a new demand. So therefore he said no negotiation until Thursday. And again, that's Netanyahu. That's the typical tactic that Netanyahu and company always use. Shamir before him, and Menachem Begin before him, all, Sharon, all of them. This is the same tactic. And that's why the Oslo agreement, that the Arafat and the PLO gave up everything except getting a white paper says that Israel recognized PLO as the representative of the Palestinians. They did not get absolutely anything other than this statement. And they said everything will be negotiated. What does this mean? Nothing will be negotiated. They will just drag their feet, and we can see what the PLO promised the people in Palestine. They will have a state in 5 years, and they will have this, and they will have that. All of this have evaporated. Nothing came into reality for the people of Palestine from this Oslo. On the contrary, those who follow what's happening now in the West Bank, there's a crisis. The crisis is there's no water. There is no water. I talked about this about a few weeks back. But now it got to the point where many areas in Palestine have no access to water except it comes once a week for a few hours. And it is creating a crisis for those who have money. They can go and buy tanks, and those who are, cannot afford it, there is a big problem that is there. Why? This is a result of Oslo. Because in Oslo agreement, the Israelis said they will not allow any Palestinian to dig a well to get the water from the ground. You can have a well to gather the rainwater, but you cannot dig a well to take water from the ground. And the West Bank is swimming in water. So who can take the water? The Israelis. Any Palestinians who dig a well, they will come bring the concrete and bury it, and they will punish that person. This is just one aspect of the Oslo, not to talk political gains or what have you. Another drawback on this thing, alaykum assalam wa barakatuh, that we are seeing right now, basically, is that the Palestinian Authority is fulfilling its obligation toward the security of the Israelis. So the Abbas and his people are already fulfilling, and until the day before yesterday, they have done something, out of the ordinary. Just show how criminal are those people. There is somebody who's wanted by the Israelis. His name is Abu Shuja' in Tul Karam. So somehow the news went out that he's in a hospital. So the Palestinian Authority, and the Israeli want to arrest him. So the Palestinian Authority went to arrest him on behalf of the Israelis. But the Palestinian population stood around the hospital, and they were able to smuggle him out of the hospital, and the Palestinian Authority could not take him into custody. Guess what Abbas and his people said? They are learning the lying from Netanyahu. They said, in fact, we were trying to take him so the Israelis will not take him. Everybody knew that they are there to arrest him and give Abu Shuja' to the Israelis in this regard. Now, why do I mention those two stories as a result of Oslo? Because the issue of what to do on the day after Gaza has been avoided. Because the thing is, let's get an agreement and then we'll discuss it. And the US has been pressuring Netanyahu, needed to come up with a plan. So he went through other parties, Tansiq, coordination, security coordination, and talked to the Palestinian Authority. We want your help to come to Gaza, some of your men to come to Gaza to control the crowd, but don't say you are a Palestinian Authority. Do you see this? Because they want to have a solution. So initially, for what the day after after the Gaza war finished, initially, the Israelis have this idea of we can convince some of the people of Gaza to take over. We'll give them weapons, we'll give them money. But all declined. So-called tribes. There are some Bedouin tribes or some tribes within Gaza that will cooperate. And they came clear and said, we will not work with you. So they went to the Palestinian Authority after all those failures of the authority, saying, we want you to come to Gaza to control the crowd, but on one condition: no one will say that you are Palestinian Authority, that those guys are just Palestinian. And of course, Abbas and his people said this is an insult, and they declined to go. And after that, the Israeli press said that the United Arab Emirates have agreed to take that role. This is in the Israeli press. You remember a few months back when Netanyahu said that Saudi and UAE will take a role, they criticized him publicly and said, we will not take a role. You are speaking on our behalf. Because they were talking in secret. I mean, Netanyahu did not bring this out of his mind. They were talking in those secret meetings. But he exposed this whole thing before it even started. So the Emirates and Saudi came and says, we have nothing to do with this. But after the meeting in Bahrain, it looks like this took another turn, where at least the Israeli press, when I said Israeli press, at least you will see from the Jerusalem Post to the Haaretz, to the Times of Israel and some of those TV channels, there's this talk, and so far we did not hear from the Emirates now that this is, baseless, has no base, baseless. Now, what is the secret? What is it? It seems that some of you might heard a name, Muhammad Dahlan. How many people have heard the name Muhammad Dahlan? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about then. So Muhammad Dahlan used to be head of the security agency for the Palestinian Authority. And he was working for Arafat and then working for Abbas. And then there was some friction between him and Abbas, resulted in Muhammad Dahlan flooding the Palestinian territory and going to live in the Emirates, UAE. So this plan that they are talking about basically is bringing 2,500 men. I'm not sure if also they have women, but at least 2,500 elements of security. Those are Dahlan people. Because again, the condition from the Israeli side to the PA was not accepted. That you do not say that they are PA. So they came up with this arrangement with the United Arab Emirates that 2,500 people from Dahlan people will be the one who are taking charge in the interim period, temporarily. Of course, the Zionists will say temporary, but eventually they will try to push for it to be the way. Now remember that Dahlan and Hamas were enemies. I mean, you need to appreciate the word enemies here. Dahlan and his people in the old days have given the Israelis some of the most important elements within Hamas. They were in in Palestinian Authority jails, and they hand them to the Israelis. So this is a scandal that every Palestinian knows in this regard. And when Bush met Dahlan, he was talking about that this young guy have a promising career, that he is really, he have a future. So the CIA were betting on Muhammad Dahlan. But what took place after the elections in Palestine is that the US had a plan for Dahlan to take over Gaza. And they were, go back to 2005-06. And they were preparing a militia trained by the CIA in Jordan and Egypt that will go and take over Gaza and will be under Dahlan. Before this team arrives, Hamas took over Gaza and kicked Dahlan and all the PLO out of Gaza. And those who stayed were subdued. So Muhammad Dahlan has that history with Hamas, enmity. But also he have enmity with Abbas. In the last 5-6 years, Hamas and Dahlan start working together. Now, why? You wonder. Because basically Hamas want to say that there are factions within the PA, not just Popular Front and the Islamic Jihad, that they are reaching to others. And to put more pressure on Abbas and his people. What is known for sure Dahlan has been pouring millions of dollars on his followers in Gaza and the West Bank. This is clear. I mean, nobody in the West Bank and Gaza would question this. There is an army of people who depends financially on Dahlan each month. And of course, this is UAE money. So they are also doing the preparation. From this background came the 2,500. But until now, nothing is there until there is an agreement. And again, Netanyahu is not moving an inch. He moves one step forward and then two steps backward. And this is not expected to change unless something drastic took place. Remember the last session that we talked here, we said that looks like things are hanging together and going in the right direction. Expect to have something, except if Netanyahu will stand on its way. And so far he is in this regard. So he came to Washington and he gave this talk. And of course, Netanyahu is supposed to give a talk to talk about his victory. But here he cannot claim victory. So he talked to Congress about the promise of victory, that we will win. The promise of victory, because victory is not achieved. He cannot say we have achieved victory, the promise of victory. Now, you have seen in the media, and for those who listen to his speech, between each two lies, there's a lie. So this thing was full of lies. I mean, he was criticized by US congressmen and senators and by Israeli politicians. Take one of the big ones. Now, all of us know about the massacres that took place in Rafah and other places. So he, in front of the Congress, he said he went to Rafah and he asked this Israeli army official there, how many civilians were killed in Rafah? And the guy said, basically none. There were 2 or 3. And he proceeded as if this is a fact, although the whole world knows hundreds were killed in Rafah, if not even beyond that. I mean, how you can cover the sun with a small plate? How? But again, he would make the lies, and those congressmen and senators, the slaves of the AIPAC, will stand and clap. Because AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, is watching each one what they are doing. Each one is supposed to, clap hard, stand. And they made it clear that from now on, we're going to hold every congressman, every senator on where do they stand from the Israel issue and Gaza, etc., in the next election. And you find many of those who are within the high rank of the Democratic Party boycotted this meeting. Some of them are Jews, this speech. Major among them was 2 individuals. I mean, there were about 60 or 70, but majors among them were 2 individuals. Anyone can make a guess? Pelosi is one. Huh? No, Sanders is expected. He's always on the left. Huh? Harris. This was a biggest insult that Netanyahu got in Washington, D.C. Because remember, in theory, you have 100 senators, right? So the head, the one who presides over the Senate, is the vice president. As long as, the vote is, let's say, 70 to 30, 60 to 40, 55 to 45. Yeah, but if the vote is 50-50, the President of the Senate will come and break the tie vote. So the actual, weight that carries the Vice President carry is, in this case, it makes a big difference. And usually when there's, somebody coming with some importance from overseas to give a talk, the Vice President usually is sitting. And Harris said, I have something to do in Indianapolis with one of those sororities. I mean, that was his biggest insult that he got. Yeah, some people will say, well, what about, Rashida Tlaib saying, war criminal, and the media, showing the speech and going to Rashida Tlaib, war criminal. Of course, there were many setbacks that he had. This is not the typical visit that he has. Add insult to injury that when he met with Harris, the meeting did not last more than 40 minutes and ended on very bad note. Very bad note. Because when he meets with Biden, Biden, as we said, he's a walking dead man. Walking dead man. He would say, Bibi, you need this, we need to do this, you need it. And yeah. And, that's how it goes. Maybe those people, Secretary of State and, a company in this regard, National Security Advisor. But those are Jews too. So the National Security Advisor and the Secretary of State are Jews. So what do you expect in that regard? But when he sat with Harris, she really was firm. And she said it afterwards. And Trump, after the fact, said that the fact that she did not attend the meeting, the speech, is because of anti-Semitism. That's an insult. Say, oh, okay, this is why she did not attend this speech. But then what she said after that was very significant. After the meeting, and she was, you can see in her statement and in the way and coordinated herself that she was really, things did not work, and she really gave him a lesson. She came out and she said, I will not stay silent on Gaza. This is directly after the meeting. I will not stay silent on Gaza. That was an important statement. Another important statement, in the second stage of this peace, or so-called, ceasefire, all the Israeli army will be out of Gaza. For a politician to make this statement, that's not really wise. Because people will not take you seriously if this thing did not happen. So the moment that you come and say, this will happen, we did not have anybody making such a clear statement that in the second stage of the ceasefire, all the Israeli army will be out of Gaza. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. And that's why you hear some of those members of Israeli parliament saying, this woman is very dangerous for the world. Wait a minute. What does the word have to do with this? Now, tell me she is very dangerous to the Zionists. Why? Why very dangerous for the world? What's the issue with the word? This has to do with the Zionists. She is making statements. I will not be silent on Gaza, and all the Israeli army will have to leave in the second stage of the ceasefire. But again, it's their ways and means, those Zionists, to make the issues as if they are world issues, not their own crimes and their own work in this regard. So there is no doubt, and if we have time, we'll touch upon this issue of the election, American election, and some of the events, that Harris have taken a strong stand. And as I said, that a careful politicians will have to have, a backbone to come and say, you will be out of Gaza in the second stage. It means that, it will happen. Because this is supposedly the United States of America. This is the country that owns this Zionist entity. This is the country that without the US, the Zionist entity will not last more than a few weeks. I mean, remember the statements of Netanyahu. Even when the international court issued this statement of indictment against him and against Gallant and against Halevi and, for the arrest as war criminals, he said only the US can stop it. So what did the US do? The US is not a member of the court, so it cannot really do anything other than threats. So congressmen and senators went there and they start threatening the judges. But at the same time, the US coordinated with Britain, who was a signatory, a member of the International Criminal Court, to go and object. So Britain, with Sunak as Prime Minister, went to the International Court and said that we're gonna submit an objection and talk about this, that this indictment should not be. And we'll bring the case. And of course, the Zionists were very happy. Now Britain is on our side, and they're going to do it. Well, there was an election in Britain. Sunak is gone. In fact, he was, in election term, he was murdered. Not in the sense that he was killed, but basically the election, it's as if really he's dead in the water. And, he has admitted. So this Gar Starmer, who is the new Prime Minister Labour, went to this court and said, we are withdrawing our objection to your decision. So now nobody is objecting for the arrest of Netanyahu, that statement, as a war criminal, and Gallant as war criminal, and Halevi as war criminal. And that really got the Israelis again very, very upset. Because they usually like to have someone fighting for them. Fighting for them. Just read the Surah Al-Ma'idah. اذهب أنت وربك فقاتلا. To Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam, go, you and your Lord fight. We are here. So do the fight and we'll come. It's the same mentality. They have been using the US in the Security Council all those years. They have been using Russia to provide more than 1 million immigrants. They have been milking Germany hundreds of billions of dollars over the years. I mean, the French have provided them with the nuclear technology to build the bomb. And we can continue. This is what the Quran says, حَبْلٌ مِنَ النَّاسِ, that they only can have a stand not on their own, only with the support of Allah or the support of the people. And that's what has been happening since the beginning of the 20th century and the Balfour Declaration, the support of the people in this regard. So it looks like this is at standstill unless there is something out of the ordinary that would convince or pressure Netanyahu to make such a deal. It looks like it still is waiting for his decision because everybody else is sold. Of course, the right wing, Ibn Gfir and Smotrich, are against it, no doubt. But I'm talking about people who are in the army, in the intelligence, and in many aspects of and echelons of the power in the Zionist entity. So let's shift to Lebanon. What happened in the last 24 hours is some kind of an explosion happened in a soccer field in a town called Majd al-Shams, which basically inhabited by the Druze. Those are Syrian Druze. Kids were playing soccer in a soccer field. With this explosion, 12 of them died, and there were about 29 or so injured. The Israelis saying this was done by Hezbollah. Hezbollah said we did not target this place. It could be that the Israeli defenses that try to bring down the missiles have malfunctioned and caused this explosion, which the government of Lebanon tried to promote and saying let's have an investigation. But regardless, Netanyahu cut his visit to Washington, went back, and gave a cold shower to the defense minister Gallant. Because Gallant, in the absence of Netanyahu, took the stage and started threatening Hezbollah and threatening Lebanon. We will do this, we will do that, we will do this, and we will have this, strong response. So Gallant, for about 24 hours, was the face of the, we will do something. And Netanyahu criticized him, saying, basically, you took the stage from me. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. Because basically Netanyahu is the one who needs to stand in front of the camera and say, we will do this, we will do this, and we will do that. Now, who are the Druze? This Majd al-Shams is a Druze town. And those who were killed are Druze. Who are the Druze? During the time of the Fatimid rule of Egypt, the same Fatimiyin who built Al-Azhar, there was one of their rulers have a name of Al-Hakim bi-Amrillah al-Fatimi. Al-Hakim bi-Amrillah al-Fatimi. This Hakim bi-Amrillah al-Fatimi, during his tenure, some people came up with a very awkward idea that Al-Hakim is God in the flesh, just like Isa alayhi salam. And Al-Hakim did not die a natural death. He was on his horse, went somewhere and never seen after that. Those people came and said, he is Ghaiba and he will come back. Just like what the early people said about Imam Ali, that he's not dead in the Ghaiba. All this, false Aqidah issues that started from that time. Those people were eventually persecuted in Egypt, who says Al-Hakim is God. I mean, how could somebody live among the Muslims say somebody like Al-Hakim is God in the flesh? So they fled from Egypt to where? To Lebanon. And from that point on, those Druze have inhabited Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine. That's their basic belief from that time. How many? In Palestine, they are about 130,000. And in, between Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria, maybe 2 or 3 million. I'm not sure, but not a big number. But they produce children, and they are too secretive. So basically, there is a committee. They call it the al-aql, which the brain, if you translate it literally. This is the aql of al-ta'ifa. So that's their chief. And basically, their current belief is a mix of Islam and Hinduism and some Greek philosophy mixed together. And you do not learn the secrets of the deen until you reach age 40. You do not learn the secrets of the deen until you reach age 40. So therefore, whenever you read a statement, a book or that about this word secretive, they are very secretive. And the cultures in Palestine, we have a saying in Palestine, eat at a Jewish home and sleep at a Christian home. That's a famous saying in Palestine. Whenever you mention Christian and Jews, said eat at a Jewish home, because they eat, they do not eat the things that we do not eat. They're just like us in terms of the food. But they are, ghaddar. Don't sleep, go sleep at a Christian place. In Lebanon, they say, eat at a Druze place and sleep at a Christian place. Because the Druze just same thing, eat what we eat in this regard. Now, what's unique about the Druze, which, this is not the Druze, a class of Aqidah, I just mentioned those things, but the thing that I want to mention is when the Jews came to Palestine, and with the support of the US and Russia and Britain and France and others established their Zionist entity, they got support in Palestine locally from two groups. One is the Druze, one is the Sharkas. I think in English they call them Circassians. Sharkas. So the Druze, now you have an idea what are the Druze. Those are Arabs. They speak Arabiya, but they do not make the 5 daily prayers. And they do not have the Quran, the one that we have. They have a mix in this regard. The Sharkas are from the former Soviet Union. They immigrated early on to Jordan and Palestine. Two of them, two types. One is the Chechens, and one is the Circassians, Sharkas. And there is no way that you can think that those came from similar background in terms of the location, former Soviet Union. The Chechens are fighters. They would not compromise. In Russia, if you want to praise somebody, he said he fights like a Chechen. The Sharkas are totally on the opposite. They just see who is in charge and power, and they change themselves to fit. So in Palestine, the Sharkas and the Druze became the backbone of the locals supporting the Zionists. There are Sharkas in Jordan too, who have been totally loyal to the king, as you would expect. So they just fit in and see who is in charge. Now the Druze are mainly in Lebanon, Syria, and Palestine. I remember 2 years ago, we visited the occupied Golan Heights. And basically, you drive all the way to the north in Palestine. When you get close to the Syrian border, or the Golan Heights, you will see all sorts of people who dress differently. Those people who are familiar with the sirwal of the countryside in Syria, they are dressing in sirwal. Their women are also have this unique dress. You will think that they are Muslims, but they are actual Druze. Now, those Druze have been part of the war on Gaza, and some of them were killed in Gaza. And their leadership has been, shouting and crying that, look, we are fighting for the state, but we are not being treated as equal. Because the Knesset have introduced a law that this country is for the Jews. So although they are sacrificing and they are drafted into the army, I remember when I was in elementary school, when the soldiers used to enter the school and beat the students, the worst among them was the Druze. But if you talk to them, you would not recognize they are Druze. For example, they celebrate Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, and they take off. And they speak Arabiya just like any other Arab. But when it comes to loyalty, their loyalty, first of all, is for their sect, and then for the Israeli government. In Syria, their loyalty is for their sect, and then to Bashar al-Assad, and before him to Hafez al-Assad. In Lebanon, it's different. Because during the time of the Uthmanis, many of the sects, Christian sects, who fled Russia, the Armenians, for example, some who used to be there from the old days, from the Imam al-Awza'i, the Maronites. You have the Druze. You have 200 millahs that were present under the Ottomans toward the end of the Uthmani rule. Many of them are in Lebanon and Syria because the Kuffar used Lebanon and Syria, and to that extent Palestine at the time, to be a basis for their work to dismantle the Ottomans. And that's why the Druze in Lebanon, they are not loyal to the Christian government. Because the Druze used to be the bosses of the Maronites until 1860s. Until 1860s, the Maronites used to work for the Druze. 1860s, the British and the French instigated the problems between the Druze and the Maronites. They massacred each other. Thousands were killed. After that, the British brought their navy, sided with the Druze. The French brought their navy, sided with the Maronites. And from that point, they forced on the Uthmanis that Lebanon will have a special status. That's why the Druze despised the Maronites. And that's why they are not loyal to the government like in Syria and in Israel. So they have their coalitions that they have. Their leader used to be Kemal Jumblat, that the Syrian leader killed. He was killed by Hafez al-Assad. And his son, Walid Jumblat, is always drunk. When his dad was killed, they were looking for him to come and take the leadership of the Druze. And he was at a bar, as usual. I mean, he used to be drunk 24 hours. And they came to the leadership. Now, even when he took Al Jazeera, you will see most of the time he's, not coherent. But they are not loyal to the government. On the contrary, they used to ally themselves with the PLO and with the people on the left and the people who are the socialists in this regard. That's why they are different in Lebanon in this regard. So now you see some of the Jewish leadership, Zionists, went to Majd al-Shams, they kicked them out. They said, what? We have been here suffering all this time. We did not see any of you. Because now they are coming to register points. We stood for this. Smotrich himself was kicked out. And they told Netanyahu not to come. Because again, they have been part of the war. They participated in the massacres in Gaza, killed people in Gaza. And we have seen some of their janazas. إلى جهنم وساءت مصيرا. And his name is Muhammad. And of course, many people are, how could Muhammad do this? Well, that's the Druze. And, you know, just as I said, in Palestine, the same. You do not trust the Zionists in Lebanon. You do not trust those people, the Druze sect in this regard. So it looks like exactly the same thing that happened between Iran and Israel. Remember a few months back where the Israelis bombed the part of the compound of the Iranian embassy in Syria, the building next to the embassy, which is part of the embassy, and Iran mentioned to the US that they had to respond. They have no choice. So the US went to Israel and said, the Iran will respond. We want you not to respond. We do not want war between Israel and Iran. And the Iranians let the Israelis know 2 days in advance that they are going to be doing it on Saturday. So basically, they were prepared, and there's not much damage that took place. But it was a limited, coordinated response. Same thing in here. And what's the evidence? It's the Lebanese foreign minister. Lebanese foreign minister today came and said that we were informed by the Americans that the Israelis will respond with a limited response, and Hezbollah is not supposed to respond back to them. And case is over. To say that we have revenged for the Druze kids in Majd al-Shams. So it seems that, you know, it's a matter of time before Israel will hit Lebanon. But most likely, as I said, it's coordinated. So basically, no destruction of Beirut as they had talked about a few weeks ago. We're going to level Beirut. We're going to do in Lebanon what we do in Gaza and this and that. It will be something limited. The Lebanese airlines canceled the flights for tonight. They moved them to tomorrow. So it seems that this limited thing is into that angle. The US and 3 European countries asked their citizens to avoid Lebanon. So that is the expectation in this regard. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the khair and the good for this ummah and alleviate the suffering. Allahumma ameen. Let me just say a few words about the US elections, and inshallah we'll wrap this thing up. A few weeks ago, there was a debate between Trump and Biden. And until that point, there were some voices within the Democratic Party talking about that Biden needs to step aside. But the bulk of the party have stood behind the president, that he will be the candidate of the party. And everybody knows, who knows the US politics, that it's not the president who runs the country. There's a staff that run the country. I mean, imagine if somebody like Ronald Reagan would run the country. It's going to go down the drain. Reagan is an actor, but he was surrounded by William Casey, the head of the CIA. And there was this apparatus of James Baker, who eventually played more of a role in the time of George Bush. People who had run the administration. Oliver North was running a whole apparatus from the White House without Reagan knowing anything. So basically, those Democrats thought, look, we have Biden, let's stick to Biden, let's try to expose the weakness of Trump and get Biden, the same people who voted for Biden before. But there was the issue of Gaza. And so many young men and women in this country were against Biden because of Gaza and calling him, genocide Jew. It became all over the country, a cry all over the country. So was this thinking that still he would be the best candidate to beat? At least he have a name and he have some support and people would know the evil of Trump and he will keep reminding them of January 6th. The disaster happened when there was this debate where basically Biden was as if he was a dead man standing or a dead man walking. I mean, he was out of it. He was saying things that nobody understood. And in fact, Trump said, I'm not sure what he's saying, and I don't think he knows what he's saying. And he would make obvious mistakes. At one point, for example, before the debate, he called Sisi the president of Mexico. And he said, our vice president, Trump. Instead of Harris, he said Trump. And he was talking in front of Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and he said, the president of Ukraine, Putin. I mean, it became clear that, the guy is, enough مخلص, as the Egyptian put it, مخلص, خلاص. So, until the last minute, he tried to stick, and he was sincere in trying to stick to it, thinking that he was the only one that can beat Trump and have this coalition. Until all those mistakes start showing more and more and more, and the debate was, in fact, the main, turning point for him. So you start having voices within the party saying he should quit. And some of the major names in the party, they did not really come strong either way. For example, the Obamas, which carry some weight within the party, the Clintons, which carry some weight within the party, Pelosi, the former speaker, Jeffrey, the current Democratic leader, and so on and so forth, they were waiting. When the more voices start saying, he needs to go, you start having some of the donors, big donors, the millions of dollars, saying, or hundreds of millions of dollars come from them, that he needs to go. And over a few hours, that Clooney, who is an actor, but he's a big fundraiser, Adam Schiff, who is a major force within the party, they said that he should step aside. Pelosi was silent. Jeffrey was silent. And suddenly, a statement came that the president is supporting Harris to be the candidate and he will not run for election. At that point, the Clintons supported, Pelosi supported, Jeffrey supported, telling you that it was already the thinking of the leadership of the party. But they thought that let's wait for the right moment, and the turning point was that debate. Finally, Trump made a very stupid mistake, choosing Vance to be his vice president candidate. Vance is a person who have little experience. As the US, as in the Americans say, he shoots from the hip. He had made some statement that anger everyone in this regard. Few years ago, he called Trump idiot. He called Trump Hitler, just a few years ago. But now somebody asked why he would choose him. Because there was a heavyweight donor who donated tens of millions of dollars. He approached Trump the day before he made the announcement. They started discussing, and he said, you should choose Vance, although the others are much more reliable and dependable than him, and he went ahead and made that choice, which really he would not help him in any way getting any votes. The right wing in the US anyway already do not like him because his wife is a Hindu. It has nothing to do with him. I said, oh, he's married to a Hindu in this regard. So it remains to be seen where this thing is heading. Many people are on the expectation of who will be Harris vice president, and that can make a difference. Somebody like Shabiro would not be compatible because she have taken a very strong stand on Gaza, and he is weak in that regard. But it remains to be seen where this thing is heading. The senator from Arizona seemed to be the strongest candidate in this regard. And there's no doubt he's very popular. His wife is also very popular since she was shot as a congresswoman. He's a former Navy pilot. Now, the vice president of Trump keeps saying, I served in the army. He did not. He was doing a journalist's job. He neither fought nor took place. His job was propaganda within the army, basically a media representative. So there was no fighting in this regard. While the guy from Arizona was a pilot in the Navy for many years and became an astronaut. May Allah bring the khair and the good for the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, alleviate the suffering, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gather us always in His shade when there's no shade except His shade. So I hopefully will see you down the road at the end of September, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Allahu Akbar.